Hey guys, how y'all doing? BionicleSaurus here, and in this video we are going to be taking a look at the new 2017 Papo figures of prehistoric animals and dinosaurs. I am really excited because, well, quite frankly, Papo didn't have that great of a year for 2016. A lot of people really didn't like the baryonyx, myself included, honestly. I mean, it was okay, but it was deeply flawed. And even the feathered raptor and Caprasuchus weren't really amazing figures. I mean, they were good, but they weren't like, wow. They were not figures that are going to go down as Papo's best, not by a long shot. But this year, we have several figures that personally I am really excited for. So let's get right on with this video. So first off, as you can see, we have the cave bear. For me personally, this is probably the least interesting looking figure. It is just kind of a big brown bear, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's pretty good. It appears to be fairly accurate, and I mean, it's a nice looking bear. It's not like too exciting or anything, but it is pretty good. I'll probably pass on it, but it's definitely like a solid figure. There's nothing really inherently wrong with it. The next figure we have is actually another mammal. It is a new Smilodon, and this one is really weird, man. It's got the stripes of a tiger, the mane of a lion, really exaggerated fangs. It's very awesome, bro. Matthew the Dinosaur King pointed that out, and I mean, yeah, it's just sort of a really apparent amalgamation of like iconic features from various big cats, and has a lot of stylizations that are very obviously just meant to look cool and don't really make a lot of sense. I'm definitely going to pass on this figure. I really don't have interest in it. I mean, it's unique, I guess you can say that about it. Next up we have what you could easily mistake for a dragon, the new Dimorphodon. This figure is hideous and horribly inaccurate. It's a big, ugly, scaly mess with the head of a tyrannosaur. They gave it a little patch of blue pycnofibers and apparently thought that that would just solve all the problems. Never mind the fact that the texture of the skin and the wing membranes is just hideous and scaly. This is just, I mean, it's obviously based off the Jurassic World Dimorphodon, and in that sense, it's kind of a blast from the past because a lot of Papo's old figures were very much based off of Jurassic Park style dinosaurs. And it looks like the new movie made a bit of an impression on them, of course a couple years after it actually came out, but still, this is pretty obviously based off the Jurassic World Dimorphodon, and it is just as inaccurate and honestly pretty ugly as that one. Getting into the more exciting figures for this new year, we have this Polacanthus. Well, accuracy-wise, it's actually okay. The armament isn't perfect, but it's fairly close to the actual armament. If you look up a skeletal reconstruction of Polacanthus, you can see that this is not spot on, but it's definitely close enough. Although the armor on the head is a little off, just like this spike coming down on the cheek and these kind of spines and just the way there's just kind of a big scaly like mask on top of the head. Like it's really not all that close to the real skull. It just doesn't quite resemble it correctly. So getting into the last three figures, they are all just wonderful in my opinion. They are all fairly large looking theropods as well, although this is probably the smallest of them. This is their new Cryolophosaurus. We have not gotten a Cryolophosaurus since the Batattera one, I believe, and before that we had the Carnegie one released a few years prior. So it's cool seeing this animal represented in toy form yet again, and this is a really nice looking figure. I actually think the pose is fairly dynamic. The way the head and neck is positioned all looks very good, and in general the skull and all the stylizations really work from a visual standpoint, and accuracy wise, I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but you can already tell it's pretty close. And it does also resemble the Dinosaur Revolution one. Matthew the Dinosaur King also pointed that out, and yeah, it definitely has a similar color scheme going, and even the pose could be viewed as similar because there is that one moment in Dinosaur Revolution where the one Cryolophosaurus jumps up in the air and it goes all slow motion, and you know, he's not jumping up here, but he is rearing up and kind of, you know, holding himself higher up than he normally would, so That's a bit of a similarity. But yeah, I think this figure is not great necessarily, but I think it's nice looking. You know, it has flaws, but I actually think it looks pretty cool. And here we have the first really big theropod that Papo has released in a while, although the weirdly oversized Baryonyx was actually pretty large. But this one is hopefully going to be big, and it actually should be because it is an Acrocanthosaurus. I am pretty dang excited by this figure. The coloration is fantastic. Just all this really like bluish purple with this sort of orange underneath. That just looks really good. And I think I'm the only person out there right now that is not weirded out by this pose in the slightest, actually. I don't mind it at all. I think it's a shame that he needs his front hand to balance. I think it would have been nice if this figure was actually a true biped, but I mean, honestly, it's a cool pose. It actually reminds me a lot of the Carnotaurus. He's kind of low to the ground with the tail up in the air, clearly lunging forward at something. Like, to me, it's actually fairly dynamic and fluid and nice looking. I don't think it's that weird at all, so I'm not really sure why people are like... I've seen several people just in, like, the comment sections on Facebook just talk about how, like, this figure is kind of weird looking, but to me, it's just, I don't know, it doesn't bug me at all. And in general, this is just a nice looking Acrocanthosaurus. And here we have my absolute favorite of these new figures, and possibly my new favorite Papo dinosaur of all time, the new Ceratosaurus. This figure is just gorgeous. I mean, first off, it's definitely pretty accurate. I mean, there's nothing about the pose or the proportions that looks overly off to me. I think maybe the neck could be a little longer, maybe the arms a tiny bit smaller, but I mean, it's really not that far off. The pose is really simple, but really just fluid and dynamic. I love how this foot is sort of being lifted up off the ground. That's really cool looking. And in general, I mean, just the colors, of course, are what really stands out here. I mean, just that green with the blue along the back just looks really, really aesthetically pleasing. This is just one of the nicest looking prehistoric animal or dinosaur figures Papo has ever produced. It's just gorgeous. The skull is really beautiful. It's fairly close to the real animal too. It's a little bit shrink wrapped, but I mean the shape of the skull is really good, and the figure isn't shrink wrapped anywhere else. A lot of times Papo figures have muscles or bones kind of exaggerated and poking through the skin more than they really should be, but in general, like proportionally, this figure looks damn good. Really, that shrink wrapping on the orbit and the fenestrae is the only, like, issue that I can really see accuracy-wise here, the only, like, real issue. Again, there's some minor proportional nitpicks, but in general, that's all pretty dang close. And beyond that, I mean, this figure just looks really gorgeous to me. So that is it for this video. Those are all of the new 27 prehistoric animal and dinosaur releases from Papo. This is a pretty standout year for them in my opinion. I mean, we are getting 3 really nice theropods, 2 kinda okay mammals, a pretty ugly pterosaur, I will admit, but also a pretty decent looking ankylosaur. And in general, I mean, this is just a nice year. I mean, after last year's debacle with the Baryonyx, this is a major comeback in my opinion, and I just think they're just doing a great job here. I mean, all these look pretty nice besides that Dimorphodon, and if you don't care about accuracy, if you're not me, then it's probably fine with you. So, anyway, that is all I have to say for this video. I hope you enjoyed, thank you for watching, and BionicleSaurus signing out.